And I want to talk about something kind of unsettling today, the future of our food. It seems like every time I open a news app, there's another article about supply chain issues or climate change impacting the availability of, well, everything. Recent data and news reports highlight mounting concerns about food supply disruptions, and many people are questioning the security of their favorite items. It's enough to make you want to start stockpiling canned goods in your basement. But instead of giving in to the doomsday prepping urge, I thought it would be interesting to take a closer look at 6 specific groceries that might be on the brink of disappearing, or at least becoming much harder to find. The following script explores 6 key groceries that appear to be on the brink of vanishing, or at the very least facing significant shortages. We'll dig into the reasons behind these looming scarcities, reflect on how current events and global trends play a role, and consider strategies for preparation. Our conversation will also touch on adult-level perspectives regarding economic pressures, shifts in consumer behavior, and the broader implications for food access. So, let's start with a breakfast staple that's near and dear to my heart: maple syrup. I mean, who doesn't love a stack of fluffy pancakes drenched in the sweet, sticky goodness of real maple syrup? But here's the thing, that bottle of syrup might become a luxury item sooner than we think. See, maple trees are extremely sensitive to temperature changes. They need a very specific climate with cold winters and mild springs to produce sap, and as global temperatures rise, those ideal conditions are becoming increasingly rare. Climate change is disrupting the delicate balance, leading to shorter and warmer sap seasons, which directly impacts how much syrup producers can make. It's not just the weather, though. Deforestation and unsustainable land management practices are also taking a toll on maple forests, further shrinking the available resources for syrup production. And as if that wasn't enough, the maple syrup industry also faces challenges related to transportation and distribution. These often overlooked aspects of the supply chain are vulnerable to disruptions caused by extreme weather events, labor shortages, and rising fuel costs. All of these factors combined paint a somewhat uncertain future for our beloved maple syrup. So what can we do? Well, some folks are suggesting we start thinking about stockpiling. I know it sounds a bit extreme, but imagine a world without those comforting Sunday morning pancakes. On a more serious note, the situation with maple syrup is a good reminder that we need to start paying closer attention to where our food comes from and the challenges faced by the people who produce it. Moving on to another pantry staple facing challenges: chickpeas. These legumes are a dietary cornerstone worldwide, found in hummus, falafel, and curries. But chickpeas face climate-related threats. They thrive in arid climates. Droughts and scarce water strain production. Rising temperatures also impact yields. Plants struggle to flower in extreme heat. Demand for chickpeas is rising due to health trends. This puts pressure on the supply chain. Farmers and researchers are developing drought-resistant varieties. It's a race against time, but efforts are ongoing. Consider buying dried chickpeas in bulk. It's economical and ensures a steady supply. A small step towards resilience. Let's talk about quinoa, the ancient grain that took the world by storm, touted for its nutritional value and gluten-free status. But as demand for quinoa skyrocketed, it exposed some vulnerabilities in its supply chain, particularly regarding climate change. Most of the world's quinoa comes from the Andean region of South America, where farmers have cultivated it for centuries. But these high-altitude regions are incredibly susceptible to the impacts of climate change. We're talking about unpredictable rainfall patterns, increased occurrences of frost, and the melting of glaciers, which are crucial water sources for quinoa cultivation. And as these environmental shifts make quinoa cultivation more challenging, it creates a ripple effect throughout the entire supply chain. Then there are the logistical hurdles of getting quinoa from those remote mountain regions to the rest of the world. Transportation costs are rising, and the journey itself is vulnerable to disruptions from extreme weather events and other unforeseen circumstances. What does this all mean for our quinoa bowls? Well, for starters, we might see prices continue to rise as quinoa becomes scarcer, and beyond that, there's the potential for quality to be affected as well. As supply struggles to keep up with demand, there's a risk of lower quality quinoa or even adulterated products making their way into the market. So, what can we do? Well, on an individual level, it's worth considering incorporating other nutritious grains into our diets, diversifying our plates and reducing our reliance on a single source. Now, let's talk about something near and dear to many cheese lovers: hard cheeses. I'm talking about your aged cheddars, your parmesans, your goudas, cheeses that require months, sometimes even years of careful aging to develop their complex flavors. But behind those wheels of cheesy goodness lies a production process that's becoming increasingly vulnerable. You see, making hard cheeses is a labor of love. It requires a deep understanding of traditional techniques, meticulous attention to detail, and a whole lot of patience. But this artisan knowledge is being threatened by a shortage of skilled cheesemakers, as younger generations are less inclined to enter this demanding and often underpaid profession. And as if the labor shortage wasn't enough, the dairy industry is also grappling with rising feed costs and supply chain disruptions, making it more expensive and challenging to source the high-quality milk needed for cheesemaking. And don't even get me started on the impacts of climate change. Droughts, heat waves, they all affect the quality and quantity of milk production, which has a direct impact on the cheesemaking process. So, what does this mean for the future of hard cheeses? Well, we might see some of our favorite varieties become even pricier, or worse, disappear from supermarket shelves altogether. Some smaller-scale producers might even be forced out of business, unable to keep up with the mounting challenges. It's a sobering thought for cheese enthusiasts, and it highlights the interconnectedness of our food systems and the ripple effect of these global challenges. Let's be honest, spices are the backbone of flavor in countless cuisines around the world. But have you ever stopped to think about where those spices come from and the journeys they undertake to reach our spice racks? Many spices are grown in regions particularly vulnerable to climate change. We're talking about delicate vanilla orchids in Madagascar, fiery chili peppers in India, and fragrant cinnamon trees in Sri Lanka. These regions are experiencing more extreme weather events, from droughts to floods to unpredictable temperatures, all of which can wreak havoc on spice crops. And it's not just about the immediate impact on harvests. Climate change can also lead to the spread of plant diseases and pests, further threatening spice production. And once those precious spices are harvested, they face a long and complicated journey through global supply chains. And these supply chains are under immense strain these days, facing everything from shipping container shortages to port congestion to rising transportation costs. These disruptions can lead to delays, spoilage, and ultimately higher prices for consumers. But here's something else to consider. As certain spices become scarcer and more expensive, it opens the door for adulteration and fraud. So, the next time you reach for that jar of spices, take a moment to appreciate the intricate web of factors that brought it to your kitchen. Rice is a staple food for billions of people worldwide, but what many people don't realize is that there are over 40,000 different varieties of rice, each with its own unique flavor profile, texture, and cultural significance. And some of these specialty rice varieties are facing an uncertain future due to, you guessed it, climate change. See, many of these prized rice varieties are grown in specific regions with delicate ecosystems that are particularly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. Take, for instance, the fragrant basmati rice grown in the foothills of the Himalayas, or the delicate jasmine rice cultivated in the Mekong River Delta. These regions are experiencing more frequent and intense floods, droughts, and saltwater intrusion, all of which can devastate rice crops. And these climate-related disasters aren't just a future threat. They're already happening with alarming frequency. And as these specialty rice varieties become scarcer, it could have significant cultural and culinary implications. These grains are often deeply intertwined with local traditions, cuisines, and even religious ceremonies. Their loss would be felt far beyond the dinner plate. So, what can we do? Well, supporting sustainable rice farming practices, promoting biodiversity and rice cultivation, and advocating for policies that address climate change are all crucial steps. As we've explored these 6 grocery items, it's clear that there's a common thread running through all of these potential shortages. All these grocery items share certain vulnerabilities, and we're seeing a pattern across multiple articles and analyses. First, climate changes and unpredictable weather have a direct impact on production yields. Second, global supply chains are more fragile than many realize. And third, consumer demand shifts can catch producers off guard. So what can we do? Staying flexible and informed seems to be the most practical approach for anyone concerned about potential shortages. Paying attention to the bigger picture, staying stocked in a reasonable way, and being open to alternatives might just be the best strategies right now, because if these changes accelerate, We might see a world where we can't take certain items for granted anymore, forcing us to adapt our eating habits to a new reality.